So getting back to the lighthouse, there are some very interesting clues here, effectively conveying what the idea behind rapture is all about, as well as some insights into the mind of Andrew Ryan himself. This bust of Andrew Ryan appears to have been hastily placed here during the run-up to the Civil War that broke out in Rapture. Surely, one of the best and brightest who initially would have been attracted to the idea of rapture would have thought twice about entering the domain of a supposed dictator. That's why I suspect this sculpture of Ryan and the banner were not always here. Looking at the statue from this angle reveals that perhaps this was indeed hastily put here in Andrew Ryan's efforts to double down and tighten his grip on the city of Rapture. Here's another banner behind the statue over the doorway, which was placed. And based on Ryan's own recordings found in his office, this banner would have read, "A man creates, a parasite asks." A man creates, and a parasite asks, "Where is my share?" I just can't help but think that every time I see these banners in Rapture, that they are positioned as propaganda, a response to the threat posed by Fontaine. Also, notice that Andrew Ryan's sculpture is placed over top of the Great Chain Monument, indicating that Ryan's presumed altruistic intention later transformed into tyranny. In Bioshock, this ideal, known as the Great Chain, represents an economic theory originally attributed to the 18th century writings of Adam Smith. However, the game's creator drew inspiration primarily from the likes of early 20th century figures. One such notable person at this time, whom was influenced by Ayn Rand, was an economist by the name of Murray Rothbard. And this is Murray Rothbard. While he's not a character in Bioshock, which would be pretty interesting if he were, he most likely would have been a resident of Rapture if given the chance. Rothbard's anarcho-capitalism philosophy contends that services provided by the, quote, monopoly system of the corporate state, unquote, could be provided more effectively by the private sector. Rothbard considered government to be a systematized form of robbery. He called fractional reserve banking a form of fraud and opposed the idea of central banking, such as with the Federal Reserve. He also opposed all military, political, and economic interventionism in the affairs of other nations. However, this concept of the Great Chain has a hidden double meaning. This panel on the left depicts the Great Chain of Being, which was co-opted from other sources in Christianity as a hierarchical structure of all life, starting with God and the angels at the top, filtering on down through mankind, the animals, plants, minerals, and the underworld. Derived from the work of Plato and Aristotle, this great chain was used to provide a high-level view of existence, using the predominant worldview at the time. And, of course, ancient Greek philosophy remains the framework for the worldview of Western civilization to this day. Starting in post-Enlightenment Europe and the centuries which followed, this great chain idea stuck around. However, God was replaced by man at the top of this structure or this framework. For a long time, the sole authority of the king was merely a representation of this monarchical worldview handed down by religion. As mankind grew weary of this worldview, the rise of reason and the intellect through the likes of René Descartes and Sir Francis Bacon began to manifest the idea of mankind being atop the great chain of being, Andrew Ryan's statement here is a reflection of the larger dominant Western worldview of God. It is through this relatively new worldview, where man has rejected God in favor of himself, that we can understand how and why ideas such as anarcho-capitalism and the impetus for building the underwater city of rapture should come about in the first place. Generally, every post-Enlightenment philosophy centers from this presumption that man, not God, is the great primary influencer upon the great chain. The dominance of this 300 to 400-year-old presumption flavors every belief system and philosophy that has come into being since this great shift in thinking occurred. So the very same presumption that man, not God, should be the one in charge was the very cause for rapture to exist, as well as the reason why so many people wanted to escape rapture after the Civil War, of course. And even this hidden meaning of the great chain and its origins being part of the very genesis of Western civilization itself doesn't end there. For in Bioshock, this great chain holds another even greater secret meaning. But before this greater secret is revealed, it is important that we continue building the case for why this secret should have any significance in our lives at all. Because revealing the hidden theme of the entire game right up front, without the proper context, we definitely risk losing the deepest wisdom teaching that Bioshock is trying to offer us. And no, I'm not talking about the would you kindly reveal at the end of the game either. On a side note for a moment, it is interesting to see the plaques of art and science positioned on either side of Ryan's statue inside of the lighthouse. These plaques are also present on the walls before, or I should say, they're present on the walls below the statue on either side of the bathysphere, arranged in exactly the same way, with a plaque for industry in the middle facing Ryan. In one sense, these plaques are placed in such a way as to signify that rapture, created by Andrew Ryan, is the place where art and science converge, with Ryan Industries driving it all forward. It seems that somewhere between art and science is where the entirety of man's quest for knowledge and understanding are to be found in the first place. And of course, Ryan's putting himself right in the middle of that, of course. One method representing, so I'm going to say that one of these disciplines, of course, represents the intuitive and the emotional side of humanity. Of course, that would be art, and the other representing the logical and intellectual side, which would be science. And there's also a masculine and feminine energy dynamic there. Only together, through both of these, through this masculine and feminine, through heart and mind, will a great society ever be made possible in the first place. So at least you've got to give Ryan credit. At least he's on the right track, even if he's trying to put himself right at the epicenter of everything. What is most important to note as well is the particular placement of these plaques. Typically, science with the analytical mind is associated with the left brain, whereas art and the intuitive mind is associated with the right brain. While the brain actually isn't quite so evenly divided as researchers first thought, it seems an interesting clue that these plaques should be reversed. The placement could be interpreted from the perspective of Andrew Ryan, indicating that Ryan is treating art and science in respect to his own vision, placing himself as the representation of industry firmly in the middle. Industry in the mind of Ryan is how art and science are to be propelled forward in the world. Ironically, Ryan's proclamation, no gods or kings, only man, is being delivered while he is simultaneously placing himself in a godlike position. Here's another perspective from entering the lighthouse looking upward or heavenward. Not only has Ryan positioned himself to be high above everyone who enters here, but he is placed at the center of the 4 panels, which appear to symbolize possibly the 4 elements, or at least we see 3 of them on these panels. Perhaps land is rejected altogether, since this is where the laws of government and religion hold sway, right? But on these panels, you can see we have the air, and where we have fire, we have water, and of course, wind is also inferred as well. And interestingly enough, in the real world, there's a 12-mile limit beyond the shore where anyone on the planet can presumably be free from all laws. And apparently Andrew Ryan has unconsciously positioned himself as its rightful ruler, of course, right? He's saying there's no gods, there's no kings, and here he is setting himself up as a deity in the center of creation, right? So it's very ironic. Here's another visual reminder. And of course, we see Ryan, who is at the center of it all again, who oversees everything in Rapture. Just in case you forgot that, yes, he's the guy, just in case you forgot before you entered the bathysphere. Ironically, this effigy of Ryan appears as the ever watchful and jealous God from the Old Testament, or at least that's what it reminds me of. Now it's probably a good time to briefly mention the real-life cities in the middle of the ocean, otherwise known as seasteading. So this is like Rapture for real. And this is from their website. I'll read a little bit about it. The Seasteading Institute is a nonprofit organization based in California. It was founded in 2008, and that's interesting. That was a year after Bioshock came out. It was founded in 2008 by activist, software engineer, and political economic theorist Patrick Friedman, grandson of Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman, interesting, and technology entrepreneur, investor, and the philanthropist Peter Thiel. So this is a fictional rendition on their website, but you can actually go to the Seasteading Institute and learn about their cause. And apparently, some are beginning to build a Rapture-like world right now. This is an article from the Associated Press about a man off the coast of Thailand. Thai authorities raided a floating home, and this happened just about last April. Thai authorities have raided, or I should say April 2019. Thai authorities raided a floating home in the Andaman Sea belonging to an American man and his Thai partner who sought to be pioneers in the seasteading movement, which promotes living in international waters to be free of any nation's laws. Thailand's Navy said this action endangered national sovereignty, and that happens to be an offense that's punishable by life imprisonment or even death. The couple, who have gone into hiding, have been living part-time on a small structure, said it was anchored outside of Thailand's territorial waters, just over the 12 nautical mile mark off the shore of Thailand. They were not there when the Navy carried out their raid on Saturday, and they remain at large as of this writing. So this is an actual thing.